Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flach.
Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. That is Romans 12:12. I am your host, Sandra Flach. Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, where we encourage and equip you for your parenting journey. You guessed it. I'm also an adoptive mom with over 26 years of lived experience. So I get it. I'm on the journey with you, have been on it. I'm still on it. My husband and I have, we've raised 8 kids, 5 through adoption, and we are still raising our youngest 2 who are young adults who still live at home. We've done kinship and international adoptions. We're familiar with trauma and prenatal exposure to alcohol. So I know both the ups and the downs, the joys and the chaos, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, as we say. And I also know that there is hope for this journey. And I really, my goal with this podcast is to bring you some hope and some encouragement, and that it will become an invaluable resource as you care for the children that God has placed into your family. And today we have an adoptive mom guest with us, Mary Byrnes. Mary is the co-founder and executive director of Harrison's Hope, a transformative nonprofit organization dedicated to improving the lives of individuals affected by fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. Her journey into the realm of FASD began with the adoption of her son at birth, and a pivotal, a pivotal event that sparked her deep commitment to understanding and advocating for those living with brain-based disabilities. So please welcome Mary Byrnes. Hey, Mary, welcome to the show.
Hi, Sandra. I am so grateful to be invited. I've been looking forward to chatting with you. Long overdue.
Yes, I'm so excited because I first heard about you guys, Harrison's Hope, when a friend of mine who is an adult woman with an FASD, Rebecca Toulouse, was a guest on, I don't know if it was a podcast or a webinar or something that you guys were doing.
Yes.
And
yes.
I follow Rebecca, and I'm like, who are these Harrison Hope people? I have to find this out. So I did a little digging, and I'm like, oh, Mary's got to be on my show. So here you are.
Well, here I am, and thank you for the invitation. Rebecca is a remarkable individual, and I am proud to call her a friend. Yeah. So we do a monthly free guest speaker webinar for all caregivers to attend, and agencies if they wish. And Rebecca asked if she could be a guest, and I said, "Are you kidding me? I'd love to have you as a guest." Yeah. And she was fabulous. She was just so engaging and so much fun, and she is literally a walking, living, breathing example of what we stand for at Harrison's Hope, and that's about thriving with FASD, whether you're the individual living with this disability or whether you're the caregiver supporting a loved one living with FASD. So it's, Rebecca's an amazing woman, and I love her. So
yeah, me too. And I've met her in person, and she's just as amazing in person, because I didn't know Rebecca previously, but I was listening to Jeff Noble's podcast. I'm sure you know his podcast, FASD Success, right?
Yes,
and
I do.
When I first found his podcast, I was listening one day driving in the car somewhere, and he, reads that he was introducing her, and he totally botched her town, which is in New York, we call it Voorheesville, but he pronounced it Voorheesville. And I'm wait a minute, what did he say? And I'm like, and he said New York. And I said, oh my gosh, like that's right around the corner from where I live. So, I found her, and we met for coffee, and then we've done some, workshops together, some, trainings together, spoken together. run FASD. We've done some of those
Yes,
together. And so she's just remarkable and such an inspiration. She's been on this
absolutely.
podcast a few times, and such an inspiration for, for caregivers. I feel like, myself included, just to see that there is hope for our kids, and
Absolutely.
just learn, from her. So, love it. So I'm thrilled that you're here, and I can't wait to get to hear your story on how, you got involved in this, because you are an adopted mom as well. And then,
I am.
of course, we'll get to Harrison's Hope as well. So I want to hear your adoption story. So tell us about that.
Well, I am proud to say that my husband and I this September will have been married 30 years.
Yay.
And my husband is an only child, and I grew up with two older brothers who were like 6 years and 8 years older than me. So I kind of felt like an only child.
Yeah.
So, it was really important to both of us to have a family. And unfortunately, we tried, and it just wasn't meant to be biologically for us. My husband had a lot of misunderstandings about adoption, actually. He had a lot of beliefs that, I couldn't love someone else's child, and there was too many difficulties taking on someone else's child. And unfortunately, his mother passed quite suddenly, and it triggered something in him. And when I approached him several months after her passing about going down to a weekend adoption program conference at downtown Toronto, he actually said yes. So I quickly grabbed his hand and we ran out the door and went downtown to the conference. And a lot of the misconceptions that he had were spoken to at that conference.
Mm.
And we had the opportunity to walk through the profiles of all the children that were currently available through closed adoptions. There was several adoption providers there. We learned the process while we were there about getting a home study done, and about how to present ourselves to prospective birth moms. And being a project manager, I was extremely excited. I was gung ho, but I was cautiously optimistic because my husband previously had not wanted to tackle this. At the end of the weekend, we were driving the half hour home, and I turned and I held his hand and I asked him, I said, "So have you changed your mind?" And he said, "Yes," without taking a
Mm.
breath.
Wow.
And I kind of chuckled because he said, "You do all the work, I'll turn up and do whatever I need to do." And
Done.
here comes, yeah, absolutely. And this was just around Easter weekend. So to, kind of frame things up. Well, interestingly enough, it turns out that somewhere around that same time frame, a young lady in Northern Ontario became pregnant. Only
Mm.
she didn't know she was pregnant. And I'm jumping through hoops. I'm getting our home study done. We completed the Ontario Pride training requirements, which was several weekends in a row, understanding the process and understanding trauma and learning about open adoptions versus closed, and the processes, and connecting with other hopeful adoptive parents as well. So it was a really informative and exciting and scary journey for us. Um, but it was positive. We had hope for the first time. And what happened with our family is typical. I grabbed all the information I could. I put together all the information that we had to have done as quickly as possible and pushed for things to be completed. And believe it or not, we were marketable in an open adoption forum by July. So
Wow.
it went really quickly. Um, we put together, or I should say, I put together and my husband blessed the content of our profile. And I remember one practitioner in particular telling us, "Oh, don't put a picture of you and your husband and your two little dogs on the front cover because, if a birth mom isn't animal friendly, you've ruled out a lot of potential options. And I went, no, this is who we are.
Mhm.
And we are not a big flashy family. We don't live in a big flashy mansion. We don't drive expensive cars. We are middle down the road. We like to say ham and eggers.
Mhm.
Family. We have great circle of family and friends who were all hopeful and excited for us. And that's what we put in our profile. Um, Interestingly enough, in September, we got chosen.
Mm.
Now, the adoption practitioner didn't tell us. She wanted to wait just in case the birth mother had changed her mind. And I personally respected that because it would have given me false hope. But November came along and the phone rang, and it was a week before my birthday.
Mm.
And I got the best gift ever. We were told that we had been chosen.
Wow.
And we were invited in January to fly to Northern Ontario to have a face-to-face meeting. And it was incredibly emotional. It was one of the happiest days of my life and one of the most nervous times of my
Yeah.
life. I've never been so scared of making such a good impression. And then I realized that this lovely woman sitting across the table from me was going through the exact same thoughts and feelings.
Mhm.
And when we took a deep breath together, we both opened up and we started sharing and talking. And we came away from that meeting realizing that she was a remarkable young woman, wise beyond her years. And we truly respected the choice that she was making. And we agreed wholeheartedly that it would be an open adoption. And we agreed on how frequently we would get together and how frequently we would exchange photos and information. And, it gave us a lot of hope. And I remember, again, we were out shopping for a camcorder at the time to record the momentous event. And the phone rang. And it turned out that Harrison was about 20 minutes away from arriving.
Wow.
So on January 30th, our beautiful son arrived with 10 fingers, 10 toes, and a lovely head of hair, and he was beautiful. We had no idea. His birth mom did not want to know the sex of the baby before the birth, and we respected that choice too. We jumped on a plane and we got there as quickly as we could. And in less than 20 hours after Harrison's birth, um, the three of us were sitting side by side holding Harrison together.
Mm.
So it's been an incredible journey since then. Um, I have a background in education. I have a degree in sociology and psychology. And my early career days, I started um, as a resource teacher and working with kids with special needs and their parents and other caregivers next of kin. And I tended to work with the kids that were the most difficult to serve, the most complex needs. And to pay my university bills and college bills, I worked daytimes and overnights in adult group homes, supporting adults with complex needs. So, I was pretty comfortable in that environment and thought, yeah, you know what, I'm doing okay. Looking back now, decades later, I realized that many of those sweet kids that I worked with and some of the adults um, were actually likely living with FASD and just were not diagnosed. So, um, life goes on.
Mhm.
I think I'm ready. I can't be that hard to parent one beautiful child that's perfect, right? Especially with my experience. Well, let me tell you, we had a beautiful boy, but as a baby, he had GERD, so
Mhm.
he couldn't keep anything down. He was really difficult to settle. He didn't sleep. He had to be wrapped up tight like a little burrito and constantly rocked back
Mhm.
and forth to calm and soothe him. He was a baby who had 25 soothers in his crib at night, and I still had to sleep on the floor beside the crib with my hand through the railings so that he knew I was there. That was the only thing that would calm him and get him to sleep. He didn't walk until he was 14 months and a day. And then the next day he was running, and he hasn't stopped running. And I should tell you, he's 15 now. He was a happy, happy boy, but busy, into everything. I remember at school when he was going into daycare and then JK and SK, the teachers all said the same thing. Oh, he's charming, but man, I can't get him to sit still. And at that point, I knew something was up. I had a few little red flags, but I wasn't worried. I was enjoying being his mom. But then behaviors escalated, and they were scary. They were really scary. I saw depression in a young child, and I'd never really seen that before. That was new to me. And nothing would take the anxiety and depression away, and it came out as anger. And a lot of that anger was explosive. And no matter how much I told him I loved him, no matter how much I hugged and cuddled, I got pushed away, and I got yelled at, and I got sworn at. And I was just at a loss. So for us, both my husband and I, we were confused. Were we bad parents? What were we doing wrong? It had to be us, right? It had to be us. And even at school, we were noticing at the parent-teacher nights, there was a lot of, I'm not going to say blaming and shaming, but I will say it felt implied. It felt like they thought that we had a failure to bond. It felt like they thought we were too strict, too authoritarian, and if anything, we were the opposite. We were afraid to leave our windows open in the summertime because our son's yelling and screaming. The whole neighborhood would hear it. And that was, for us, it was embarrassing. We stopped getting invited to birthday parties. Our son didn't get any invitations. It was heartbreaking. We became really isolated. Even our friends and families stopped inviting us to events and didn't tell us that these things were happening. And the world got very small very fast. And I took it all in like a sponge, that it was all my fault. And my husband got angry that this was not the life he signed up for. And he said to me, Mary, you have training working with kids with special needs. Can't you fix him? And I said, no, I'm trying. I got nothing. It rattled my faith. It rattled every belief I had in myself and in life in general. And around about age 9 or 10, the depression got worse. He was climbing on the roof of our cottage and threatening to jump. And, I had to explain to him that, yes, if you jump off the roof, you're going to get hurt, but it's not going to have the outcome that you're hoping for. I said, you're going to break an arm. But I said, I think we need to get some help. We need to ask for help. And we started down the path of seeing a psychiatrist, a child psychiatrist. And we got a diagnosis of ADHD and depression and anxiety. And that began the alphabet soup of diagnoses. Medications started. He was a zombie. It was awful. It was awful for our son. It was awful for us to watch him going through it. He still wasn't sleeping. And when he escalated, there was property damage. There was elopement from school. There was elopement from home in the middle of the night at minus 30 Celsius. So you can imagine how cold that was. And he's in a sweatshirt and a pair of track pants and a pair of socks. No coat, no boots, no hats, nothing. and it's February. We had police searches out for him with helicopters and dogs, and I'm seeing it on social media. Oh, look, the police helicopter's out. I wonder who they're looking for tonight. Like it was horrendous.
Yeah.
We felt like our lives were spinning out of control. We felt like we were helpless. And we ended up looking for someone to help us get supports and services because around about age 10, even though we had tried to get help through the medical system, it wasn't working. And we were seriously considering, and it still bothers me to this day to say this, but we were looking at an adoption breakdown.
Yeah.
And as heartbreaking as it is, this child who I dreamed of having my whole life, I couldn't keep him safe and I couldn't keep us safe. That's how bad it was. So we found a local registered social worker. And I remember meeting her one evening, and the three of us as a family came in, and she greeted us, nice and casual. She was in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and these really cool red high top Converse sneakers. And I don't know, we felt heard. We felt seen. We felt respected, which is something we hadn't had in a long time. And she said, I can help. And we met several times, and Harrison met separately with her. And then my husband and I met with her, and she guided us through local supports and services. One was to get him into a day treatment program and out of the elementary school that he was in, because he wasn't learning anything. And the resource teacher was not helpful. He wasn't getting any supports that were in his IEP for ADHD, which we knew it was way more than that. We decided that we would go with the day treatment approach. And as a result of the crisis that our family was in at the time, we unfortunately had to go through some, they actually called it crisis therapy for my husband and I. It felt like we were jumping through hoops to get supports and services that we thought would help us. But when you're in crisis, you're not taking anything in anyways. But we kind of felt a little spoken at. We knew our son needed other assessments done, and it was kind of dangled at us that, well, you can't have those. You can't even get on the wait list for those until you complete a parenting course and you do this and this and this and this and this. And quite frankly, wasn't helpful. Really, really wasn't helpful. And when you're in a state of crisis, you're not capable at that point of taking that information in and self-reflecting and acting upon it appropriately. But that's what we were dealing with. Eventually, we did complete the courses. And go figure, the sticker chart didn't work. The bribing didn't work. All the tips and tricks we were given just didn't work. And again, we were told we weren't trying hard enough. So that blame and shame continued. And we saw him settle a bit in the day treatment program. And what we noticed about it was that he'd come home exhausted, but not so angry. And he had Wednesdays off. So it was 2 days of school, Wednesdays off, and 2 days more of school. There was no homework. And there was a lot of activity time for him. And there was therapeutic time for him. I'm not going to say that he got a lot out of the therapeutic time, but I think just having the downtime in the afternoons actually helped him quite a bit. So I pushed to get him for a second year in day treatment, because you're only allowed one, right? Because if it's helpful, why keep going?
Yeah.
But that's what we experienced. So we were successful. We finally, with the help of that day treatment program and that registered social worker I mentioned to you, we got put up for community consultation, where they bring all the experts in, from child psychology to to social workers, to OT, to PT, all of it. So they're all sitting around the table and they're looking at our case file. And one of the professionals there was a child psychiatrist who we had asked for a second opinion to diagnose our son what's going on. Because at that point we had the intermittent rage disorder and all of it going on. At least that's what we were told. And she said, no, you already have a psychiatrist. And no, I'm not going to do that. But it turns out she was on the community team. And 15 minutes into presenting our file, she said, oh, it's FASD. Just like that.
Wow. And how old was your son? 10?
11.
11. Wow.
11. This was all going on during COVID.
Oh, fun. Extra fun.
Extra fun, right? But thankfully, that community consultation got the ball rolling, and we were the first family. So we got connected at that point with a local agency who supports families living with FASD, whether you're diagnosed or not. So now the wheels are moving a little bit, and that key coordinator connected us with another regional hospital who has a behavioral health sciences center, and they were in the process of setting up an FASD assessment clinic. And we were the first family in our region to go through that assessment during COVID. So we had lots of online interactions. We did have one in-person meeting with a pediatrician that assessed him, and he said, well, he does have a thin upper lip, and yes, his phylanthrum's a little flat. And yes, you know, he does have the smaller distance between left and right eye, eyes, but he said, not quite enough to qualify for it. And I said, so what's missing? And he said, well, you know, from a physicality perspective, we can't give the diagnosis. I went, okay, all right, whatever. So we go on and we have the neurological assessment done by a neurologist who specialized in forensics. That's who actually did the assessment of the 10 brain domains. And when that report came back, we had 8 out of 10 brain domains significantly impacted. And at that point, I was encouraged to go back to any of the paperwork we had for our adoption. And sure enough, there was on one of the lines, one of the papers that we had to sign our acknowledgments of, one of the tiny sentences that we were too excited to look at said, adoptive parents acknowledge birth mother's acknowledgement of 3 episodes of drinking prior to her knowing she was pregnant. And she didn't find out she was pregnant until she was 5 months along.
Wow.
I had a very open, positive relationship with Harrison's birth mom. And because of that relationship and the visits, in-person visits we had, I had to have a really hard conversation with her. And it broke my heart because she was just as much a daughter to me in some ways as our communal son, we like to call him. But I called her and I said, I need your help. I said, Harrison needs your help. Here's what we're going through. And I said, we have a suspicion of what the diagnosis is, but I said, I need something from you that's going to be hard. And she said, what? I'll do anything. Anything. What? And I said, are you comfortable sharing with a doctor? And I am saying this now so that everyone knows I do have permission to share this part of the story. But she said, yes, what do you need to know? And I said, did you drink much? How much? How often? And she said, yes, I drank during the pregnancy. She said, I was, 17 going on 18. I didn't know any better. And yeah, Mary, I did. And I said, there's no blame, there's no shame. I said, I need to know to be able to help Harrison. And she said, that's the only reason I'm telling you.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to get that information documented. And because it had actually been written in that one little sentence,
Right.
it was enough.
Yeah.
It was enough. But you know what? If I hadn't kept that paperwork, if I hadn't
Mm-hmm.
gone back and looked at it again, because quite frankly, all we did was went, yep, signed it and carried on,
Yeah.
which isn't the right thing to do, but it's what you do in an emotional moment,
Yeah.
right? This
Yeah.
child was so wanted and is still so wanted and loved. And I give Harrison's birth mom huge credit. You
Mm.
know, again, another selfless act on her part for being
Yeah.
so open and so raw with me. I'm grateful for it. I really
Mm.
am. Um, so we got the diagnosis. We got on the right medications. But what I found out is that supporting a child with FASD, you can't work a full-time job like I was in the corporate world,
Mm-hmm.
managing massive projects with, telephone conferences and video conference calls at 3 a.m. with folks in Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
I had to give up that corporate gig and the paycheck and the benefits
Mm-hmm.
that came with it in order to better support our son.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I had appointments to get to, and I had a lot of learning to do
Mm.
because I was getting a lot of misinformation and it wasn't lining up with what I was trying to do. So I found every course online. I found CanFASD and I immersed myself in
Mm-hmm.
everything. I joined that, remember that social worker with the red
Mm-hmm.
Condor sneakers? She said at that point, because she was still helping us, she said, you really need to join a caregiver support group. You need your village, Mary. You need to
Yeah.
hear other people's stories. You need to hear what works for them and what hasn't worked. She said, you won't be invisible anymore. That's what
Mm-hmm.
you need. So my husband and I took the courses, did the online training, did the caregiver support groups, and I would say we got fairly educated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for me, a fire got ignited,
Yeah.
and I went, I need more. I need more. I want more.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actively participating in the caregiver support groups, and there was online support groups and social media, and I was posting away and asking questions and responding to other people, and it's like this still isn't enough. And then a gentleman by the name of Jeff Noble, who I had
Mm-hmm.
completed his courses, said, Mary, would you share your story with us? How it's going? I need caregivers to share what the strengths are of loved ones with FASD.
Mm.
So I sat on the shoreline of our cottage and I videotaped myself telling people the strengths of my son.
Mm.
And that, with all these fabulous gifts of his, yeah, it comes with some pretty ugly symptoms that people that don't know them and don't know FASD are actually called behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what they are. Um, and I realized how much fun that was for me.
Mm.
It gave me some comfort and pride in knowing the difference between a behavior and a symptom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I started talking more. I started talking to the clerk at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
And I started talking to the librarian when we were picking up books and dropping off books. And I realized I'm pretty good at that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was then asked if I'd do a podcast, much like this one, and share the story. So I did. Um, and then I was asked if I'd speak at a couple of conferences and sit up on the stage. And I went, sure, no problem. I've done it for work, so I can do this here, no problem. I didn't realize how powerful it was sitting beside Dr. Jackie Pye
Mm-hmm.
from CanFASD. And she's talking about towards healthy outcomes for individuals living with this disability. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, but Jackie, what about? And she heard me.
Mm-hmm.
She heard me and she implemented some of the answers to my what abouts
Mm-hmm.
in the update in the 2.0 version. And I went, somebody of that academic level wants to hear what I have to say. Lowly oh me.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, that just set things ablazing. So that conference I flew home from 2 years ago last May. And I was really excited because I loved connecting with people. It felt really good. And at this point, that social worker had to distance herself from us just because of her day job. And she had become a close friend. And we met for coffee after I got back from that conference. And she said, "Hey, what did you think of speaking? Did you like it?" I said, "Are you kidding? I loved it." And she said to me, she said, "You know what, Mary? I think you and I should do an in-person FASD caregiver support group." She said, "I think we'd be a really good combination." And I went, "No." And she couldn't believe I said no. She was genuinely shocked. And I said, "I've got a different idea." I said, "I'd like to start a charity." And I said, "I think we're going to have to start as a not-for-profit until we can get set up as a charity." But I said, "I want to provide supports and services to caregivers, because if a caregiver doesn't put their oxygen mask on first, they can't help their loved ones." And I said, "I'm hearing lots of things for individuals on the spectrum. I'm not hearing so much about support for their caregivers." And I said, "I want to take it further than most have." I said, "I really like the Towards Healthy Outcomes that looks at early intervention and education and works through early identification and talks about, how to support individuals throughout the lifespan." And I said, "But there's a couple of pieces I think that are still missing." And I said, "If we leverage that model and we make sure we incorporate programming at an elementary and a high school level for individuals living with FASD." And I said, "If we're putting the caregiver first," I said, "we need to be able to talk about respite and support groups, but we also need to be able to sit down with them and talk about all of the different stages in their loved one's life that requires transition planning." And not just from elementary to high school and high school beyond, but transition into employment, housing, and we have to have that hard conversation about end of life. What does that look like for a caregiver, and what does it look like for their loved one?
Yeah.
And Caroline's like, "Wow, this is huge. Like, are you kidding me?" And I said, "Yeah, but we can do it one step at a time. We can do this." I said, I've got a lifetime left. I'll do it." And she's like, "Well, you're not doing it with anyone but me." And that is how Harrison's Hope came to life.
Yeah.
We came from a family in crisis to calm, to being able to advocate for our son and for ourselves, and to have a flame lit within me, for sure,
Yeah.
to take that advocacy to the next level. And that next level is Harrison's Hope. We incorporated last May, so May of 2024, as a not-for-profit, federally incorporated in Canada. And I can tell you that we already have 30 families that we are helping. We are amplifying the services that they have elsewhere. We have many caregivers that attend. We have 2 weekly caregiver calls. We do a once a month special guest speaker. Rebecca was one of them.
Yes.
And we offer an annual Family Fun Day conference where caregivers and agency providers can come and learn for free. And their children are taken care of by qualified respite staff.
Wow.
And
Incredible.
it's the first one was fun and scary all at the same time. But we want to be community based. Our model is such that it can be picked up and put in place in any community, thanks to virtual. Our goal is to support any family that knocks on our door and help, because the reality is, with the right accommodations and the right supports, our families can thrive. Is it sunny days every day? No.
Nope.
No. But if you are feeling heard and feeling respected, and you are accommodated and supported, whether you're an individual living with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder or their loved care one, it's all the same. We all deserve that. We can thrive. We can have good days, and we can help one another through the one day or two or 10 that aren't so great, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's hope out there.
Absolutely there is. And I'm walking it. I'm living
Yes.
it. I'm breathing it. Now, not everyone has to jump into the pool that I did and create an organization like Harrison's Hope. But you know what? We're building a volunteer program. And that volunteer program is such that if you're a fellow caregiver of any individual and you want to give back by making meals or walking somebody's dog or cutting somebody's grass or reading a book, any of those things that might help a caregiver who's living and supporting someone with FASD, then that's what we'll do. So that's our project this year, is to build that volunteer program. We're also quite excited about the fact that we heard from our caregivers and their loved ones that that age group of teenagers moving into their early 20s are really struggling. They don't have their own sense of community. They don't have their tribe. And especially in even the smaller, more remote communities, it's next to impossible. So again, in a caregiver support group, we talked about it. And I said, what would the perfect model look like? And the more we talked about it, the more I realized there's a mentor program that can happen here with older adults living with FASD who could have the opportunity to build a friendship and build learning and build understanding with a younger individual living with FASD. So we're still working on the parameters, right? But it would be a safe program. There would be a lot of caregiver involvement because there needs to be, I like to say the bumpers there to protect everyone. But that is a program that we are working on. And it was inspired, quite frankly, by the FASD United's team of adults that participated at last year's Seattle conference. I mean, the leadership team, what they did for the individuals that were on a separate conference line themselves. I saw youth in their late teens and early 20s enter the conference very reserved, very shut down and closed, and they blossomed. It was inspiring, and that planted a seed for me to go, how can we leverage that? And I am seeing the potential for that in some type of mentorship program where both parties benefit, right? And my goal ultimately is to be able to have those mentors come together. So it's going to take time to build the communities so that I can find mentor and youth to come together that are at least within somewhat close proximity. But it's there, and it's way more than it's germinated. So, these are the types of things that Harrison's Hope focuses on. We're not so much the case management piece, because there's lots of agencies out there already doing great work. But we're here to fill the gaps, to hear what caregivers may need and what their loved ones are missing. We have a death doula on our team.
Wow.
And she is there to help caregivers plan their end of life, whatever that's going to look like. We have support from a lawyer who specializes in Henson trusts, and estate planning. So they will be one of our guest speakers this year as well on a call. So we're bringing the professionals into us to say, these are families that need a little extra support. Are you willing? And because of their own personal lived experiences, they're saying, yes, absolutely. So when we say we are offering womb to tomb support, we truly are.
You are.
And big focus is on those transition times, both for an individual living with FASD on the spectrum and their caregivers.
Yeah, because it is huge. Now, Mary, I know you're based in Canada, so are all of your services for Canadian families? Does it cross over into the States? Do you have online things that our listeners could be participating in?
So I'm glad you asked that question, because I don't know how many times our family was turned away before we knew what Harrison's diagnosis was. And one of the founding principles with Harrison's Hope is that no one's left behind.
Yeah.
So yes, we're federally incorporated in Canada. But yes, we are second behind Nate Sheets, I think, on our collaborative FASD community for caregiver workshops. So we do have virtual workshops that are year round. We only shut down between Christmas and New Year's. And any caregiver is welcome. Any caregiver living with someone who is either diagnosed or suspected of.
Yeah.
Okay. The diagnosis is not critical for us. They're all welcome to join. The nice thing about our support groups is you need to be respectful of everyone's opinions, whether you agree with them or not. We are a bio-mom friendly group. We have bio-moms in our family at Harrison's Hope. And that if you have an issue with someone, you tell us so that we can help you resolve it. We don't record our caregiver groups. You don't have to turn your screen on. So you know what? If you want to turn up in your pajamas, turn your video off. No problem.
Yeah, no problem.
We don't take attendance. You don't get penalized for eating your lunch. You don't get, kicked out for only being on the call for 15 minutes because I'm a caregiver. You're a caregiver.
Get it? Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So sometimes we have a handful of people on the call. It's only an hour, just an hour on Tuesday afternoons from 1 to 2 Eastern Standard Time. And New year, new dates. Tuesdays are evenings from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Thursdays are our afternoon from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard.
Very nice.
And what we do is, if you're interested in joining us, you just send us an email at info@harrisonshope, all one word, .ca, and say, I want to register for the caregiver group. We'll put you on our email distribution list, and we send the link out for each call the day before, so you have it in your inbox, and away we go. It's exciting times for us at Harrison's Hope. We have a lot of interest in service providers that have reached out to us to say, can you provide our staff with training? So we are currently involved supporting women's health. So we're partnered up with a local pregnancy clinic. And we have a brochure that we've created specifically for them to put in their welcome baskets for any individual, any woman that comes in looking for supports and services. We are partnered with the youth criminal justice system and a couple of regions in Ontario, and hoping to expand beyond to help them better understand what restorative justice should and could look like for individuals living with FASD. We're also connected with several homeless programs for both women and for youth. We do food and clothing drives for one particular agency that's near and dear to my heart. And they in turn share our material with caregivers of many of the individuals that use their services. We partner with local police departments to provide training. We've gone into high schools to talk about
Very
FASD.
good.
And there's lots more coming from the advocacy and education perspective. I'm really proud of, how far we've come in a very short period of time. Expecting to be a registered charity any day now. So, I'm excited. I'm not going to stop doing this until somebody tells me I need to stop.
Sandra Flach, host of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, and FASD educator Debbie Raymond invite you to join Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, diagnosed or not. This faith-based support community meets online 3 times each month, features special VIP guests, and a private Facebook group for members only, which includes Soul Care Saturday video devotionals led by Sandra and Deb. Both Sandra and Deb are adoptive moms raising kids with FASD and facilitators of the Facets neurobehavioral model. For details and to register, visit justicefororphansny.org/hope-community. That's justicefororphansny.org/hope-community.
So Mary, Harrison's Hope is doing incredible work on behalf of families and individuals and in your community there in Canada and with the online stuff. Give us your website so our listeners,
Yes.
if they're interested, can find out more.
Absolutely. So we're www.harrisonshope.ca. And while our name is Harrison apostrophe S, there is no apostrophe in the web address or our email address.
Oh, good to know.
So it's important for folks to know, but I can also tell you that if you Google FASD, hopefully Harrison's Hope will come up.
And if we search it enough, it will, right?
Absolutely. And if not, you've got my email address. You know how to
Yes.
get a hold of me.
Yes.
But yes.
And we'll put everything in the show notes for this episode so our listeners can easily find it. Speaking of Harrison, tell us, I know you mentioned, we know that every individual with an FASD has strengths, right? So share with us some of his strengths and then give us an update. How is Harrison doing now?
Absolutely. So first of all, I can brag about Harrison all day long. He is my favorite human being. His strengths include the empathy and compassion that he has for others is exponentially above and beyond most people. He has the wisdom of a Dalai Lama some days that I find inspiring and incredible all at the same time. He's phenomenal with animals. His connection with animals is extreme. Someone will say, "Oh, don't go near that dog, it's aggressive." And Harrison will, in time, build a connection with that animal, and it'll be the kindest, sweetest thing you've ever seen. He is exceptionally gifted when it comes to water sports, being, I'm going to say, dragged behind a fast-moving boat. Harrison excels at kneeboarding, wakeboarding, skiing, and slalom skiing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a gift. It is an absolute gift. And he is so much fun to watch. So much fun that he volunteered last summer at a water ski school camp for kids. And he actually helped kids learn how to water ski. And I have never seen his self-esteem shoot through the roof the way it did last summer. I am also incredibly proud of him. He puts his whole heart and effort into everything he tries. He has a black belt in Taekwondo that he got in 2.5 years.
Wow.
Now, people go, Taekwondo, woo, but it taught him respect. It taught him routines. Yeah. It taught him confidence in himself. And, it gave us multiple opportunities to talk about use your words before your hands or your feet, in his case, sometimes. Harrison has come a long way, and the reason why he is thriving today, he is in grade 9. He is supported in a really great school program who understand how to accommodate individuals living with this disorder. The program is really interesting in that he has first period and last period with a special education teacher and a support person. And then the other 2 classes are regular curriculum. When he started high school, he was in the local level of programming for English and math. And within 2 weeks, at his request, which speaks to his advocacy skills, he moved up to the academic level.
Wow.
and passed both with really good marks. He's just an absolute joy to be around 90% of the time. That 10%, there's always a real good reason why he's struggling. He is, with the help of Dr. Mela's medication algorithm, we feel that he is finally properly medicated. He's getting a good night's sleep. He gets lots of physical activity. And that balanced with healthy food and healthy, solid, steady routines, he's thriving. And yes, we're going through, the teenage trauma, but he's getting through it and he's doing well. We have arguments over cell phones and content and everything else, but you know what? We find our way through it, and we find our way through it as a family.
Yeah.
So it's huge. We have respite. We pay for respite because we know our family needs it, and our son loves it. We found a great partner there. So I'm uber proud of him. I'm proud of my husband for completely changing his perspective on adoption and his perspective on loving someone else's child, his perspective on, I don't know how to help someone with special needs, especially this complex. He's amazing. He's a great dad. But you know what? We have to work at it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's growth. It's growth for all of us. I have learned more about myself in the last 5 years in particular, because of our journey with FASD. And I hope that never stops. I really do.
Yeah, I hear you.
That's the strengths.
Yes,
that's the strengths nursing brings.
Very similar journeys, and I'm thrilled to hear how well he's doing. And you've got a son that likes to be behind the fast-moving vehicle, and I have a son who likes to be on the fast-moving vehicle.
Yes.
He has a jet ski that he just.
There we go.
There you go. They'd make a great team someday if we get them together.
Well, Sandra, we have to, because up here we're a snowmobile family.
Oh,
And
we are that too. Yes.
Harrison is really good on a snowmobile
Yes.
and wants my machine.
Yes. Yes.
So then we definitely have 2 reasons to get our boys together.
Yes. We got some
Both
stuff
in the
in
winter
common
season
there.
and the summer. We're going to make it happen.
Absolutely.
I
So,
love that.
yes. So Mary, but before we go, our listeners are primarily, mostly adoptive and foster parents, moms, possibly raising kids with FASD, or some of us know that we are. So would you close us out with some words of encouragement for our parents and caregivers that are listening?
So I think there's a couple of things that's really, really important to remember. And for us, it's what we live by. And it's right beside our logo. The journey is so much better when we are not alone. Find your community.
Yeah.
They are like-minded individuals. There will not be judgment. There will be support. You can't do this by yourself. You will not survive. And your family, including those with FASD and their siblings who may not have this disability, none of them will survive. So my words of wisdom are: connect yourself with your community that understands you. Learn, be open, and take care of yourself. Self-care is the big buzzword out there. Self-care can be sitting in your car for an extra 10 minutes before going in the house some days.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I don't think our caregivers give themselves enough self-compassion and enough grace to say, this is hard.
Yeah.
And I need 5 minutes. That's okay. And if that 5 minutes is scrolling social media, so be it. But there is hope. You know, when we understand and we're rested, we can give more and we can do more.
Yeah.
When we give more and we do more and we accommodate for our loved ones, they do well. When they're doing well, we do well.
Yeah.
So there is hope. I am not the only success story, right? Our life is far from perfect. We have holes in the wall, and the way we celebrate them now is we put a picture frame up over it. Because does it really matter that there's a hole in the wall? No. But what matters is the relationship, and what matters is the connection between all of our loved ones and our families.
Yeah.
Right? If you have that, you have everything you need.
Yeah. Love
That's
that.
just my belief.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Mary, thank you so much for encouraging us. Thank you for all that you're doing on behalf of the FASD community. And thanks so much for being with us today.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you, Sandra, for the invitation.
And thank you for listening to the adoption and foster care journey this week. I hope you were inspired and encouraged by my conversation with Mary Byrnes today. And of course, in addition to encouraging you, we want to equip you for your parenting journey. You heard about our Hope for the FASD Journey support group, the online support community that we offer in the little commercial. We also, offer training online and in-person FASD workshops using the Facets neurobehavioral approach. I also do one-on-one parent coaching online. You can learn about all of the above and register for any of those things that you're interested in at our website. Go to justicefororphans.ny.org. You will find everything there. And every month I offer a free intro to FASD online workshop. We kind of change it up with the different days and times to hopefully catch everyone who's interested in those. And then we do 3-hour ones. I have an 18-hour one, which is basically 6 weeks, once a week for 3 hours each week for 6 weeks. I call it a deep dive into FASD using the Facets neurobehavioral model. That's coming up. We're offering that 18-hour session. It's 18 hours worth of content starting May 1st. So you will want to sign up for that as soon as possible if you're interested in taking that course. And if there's something else you're interested in and that you don't see on there, feel free to reach out to me. My email is in the show notes to this podcast, in the show notes, so that you can reach out to me that way as well as the website for Justice for Orphans. I kind of blanked out on y'all there. And I have my personal website, sandraflach.com, where I do blog. I've started putting up some more devotional type blog posts that I'm doing more regularly now, but lots of stuff there that you can check out. I did a whole series on the primary symptoms of FASD, lots of content there that you can check out. And of course, you can subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, follow it, share it with your fellow adoptive and foster care friends. Follow our social media. Justice for Orphans has both a Facebook and Instagram page. I myself, Sandra Flach, I'm on both of those platforms as well. And if you are on YouTube, you can watch the video version of these podcasts on the Justice for Orphans YouTube channel. So lots going on up there. You can find us if you look for us. And we would love to connect with you. And I am grateful that you spent your valuable time with us today. I'm thrilled to have you along for the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans. And check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.